So, as a theory of line weights go, it is typically, if you see an elevation or something that is orthogonal view, it is whatever is closest to you is the stuff that's supposed to be the thickest line. Whatever is furthest away from you would look like the thinnest line. It's kind of like atmospheric haze. When you look at something that's far away, you see very little of it. When you look at something that's close, it's very sharp and crisp, right? So in the same way, we're trying to represent all of that sharpness and that field of depth using line weights. So when you look at this elevation here, whatever is the closest, which means that in this floor plan right here, whatever is the closest is your cut of your wall. So that probably should be the thickest. Whatever is the furthest away, which probably in this case is the sill right here, is probably going to be the thinnest line. Because remember, when we look at the three-dimensional view of this thing, we're cutting through about this 4-foot height length, and that cut right there on the wall should be the closest to you, and this part of the sill should be the furthest part away from you. Okay, so this one right here, I think I put it a little bit incorrectly, that these lines right here, since it is cut, probably should be part of this cut line as well. So I might in fact do that. So let's go there just to get everything somewhat correct. I'll match it with the wall cut line, since okay, because that part is going to be stair that's cut. Okay. All right. So to go ahead and to set the line weights, we could do it in a few different ways. Okay. One way is to use your layer property manager. You set all these different line type or line layers. I'm sorry. We set all these layers, and each layer contains information. These colors really don't matter unless you are going to print in color, but the line type, we set a few different line types, such as dashed or hidden or something like that, right? So a third option that we could place on this line work is the line weight section. Again, whatever is the closest to you should be the heaviest line weight. So in our case right here, which is the wall that's being cut, and I believe it's in this layer right here, that line type or line weight, I'm sorry, should be the heavier line weight. And again, we're going to experiment with this a little bit. So when you look at this sheet of paper, depending on the scale of your drawing, our scale of the drawing right here, I believe, was 1/8 inch. When we print this out at 1/8 inch, you're going to see double sets of line for the interior and the exterior walls. If we set this line too thick, like let's say I'm going to set this to 1.2 millimeter and say okay. Right now it doesn't look like much, but if we go ahead and show the line weights, it will look something like that, right? So when I do that, maybe the line weight is way too thick, and we'll mess with it a little bit more. So if we take this line weight and put it to something like 2 millimeters, it looks like there's no space between the lines at all. And when you print this out, of course it's not going to look exactly like that, because the 1.2 millimeter right here, right, it looks like this on the screen, and it looks kind of ugly. But when you look at your cheat sheet right there, that's, let me just set the cheat sheet out, 1.2 is this line thickness. When you have this sheet in front of you, you can always guesstimate what line weights you should be using. Okay, so this cheat sheet is made for your convenience of kind of getting the range of the line weights that might be necessary on your presentation. So like I said, the line weights there looks a little bit too thin, or I'm sorry, thick. So perhaps the line weights that we should be using might be somewhere around, let's see, 0.5 millimeter or maybe 0.3 millimeter. I'm going to try 0.5 first, so it's going to look like this one right here. So if I kind of say 0.5, like that, and OK, it will look on screen something like that. On print, it will look something like that right there. Again, this might be too thick still, and again, it might not. We're going to try to find out, okay? So, the next set of line weights that we might place on there, going from thickest to thinnest, would be our sill layer, right? So the sill layer, if we set the line weights to something that is a little bit more thinner, maybe to something like a 0.15 or 0.25 maybe. Or maybe 0.20. Okay. Then that'll give me the sill thickness of yay much. The glass, which is also being cut, could be changed to somewhere between there. So if I used 0.20 for the sill and 0.50 for the wall, for the glass I might select something in between, there. So 0.3 or 0.35 maybe. I'm going to try 3.5 for now. Okay. So when I gauge this thing, it's going to look something like that. I have placed all the line weights on there. This one right here, which is the loft dashed line, which is dashed above, right? The hidden line. That probably wants to be somewhere in the thinner to the mid-range. It is something that we don't really see, and it's just indicating what's above your head. So I will take that and put it to, it's a dashed line, default line weight. Maybe I'll put that to something like a 3 or 3.5. I'll put 3 for now. Okay, and I'm going to start just gauging all these different line weights that I'm putting in. We do have to be careful, however, because this line layer that we placed on here is also the same layer that we placed on your section or maybe on your elevation. So in that case, you may have to do something else. Okay. So with that, we have this stairs. Stairs, I guess it should be thinner than the thickest line. So let's turn that into something that is AR stairs. Thickest line was 5, so we'll put that as 3.5 and see how that would look. Okay. Whoops. Okay, so that's what I've set for the line weights for the plan. Now, things that we do really have to be careful about is stuff like this, where there's this door and these lines are so close together that if you did select something that, you know, on paper looks like a decent line thickness, but when two lines are so close together, it might again start to read as one thick line. Okay, so that we have to be careful of. So for the doors, I would be careful about that and place that in even a little bit thinner line than what I normally would think it should be. So for that, maybe I'll put 0.15. Again, this isn't set in concrete, and like I said, it's all determined by the scale that you use of your drawing. Because if I take this guy and turned it into double that scale, like a 1/4 inch scale, right? That's going to show as a bigger picture on the paper. And in that case, the line weights that I used here may not look, I mean, it is the same line weight. However, when the lines are closer together, you may not perceive it to be as thick as it is shown on the smaller scale drawing. And in fact, on the bigger scale drawing, the line might appear a little bit too thin. So these are the kind of things that we really have to have a critical eye for and evaluate by check plotting. Okay. So with this, we pretty much took care of the floor plan and the section, except for this yellow line right here, which should be a super thin line weight, right? I guess it's a thin line weight. So since this thing right here is to show a object that is far, far away, it should be like in a super thin line weight. So maybe we should set the line weight to super thin. Or I'm sorry, it is in a thin line weight, so we should set the line weight to something that is very thin. So maybe a 0.05 or something. Maybe a 0.09. We'll see. Okay? Okay. So there's a conflict here, which you may or may not have noticed. We have this item here as glass layer, and that layer has been set to glass, where's glass? Glass, and it's set to 0.35, correct? Yes. However, we have here on the far side of the wall the same object that is also in a glass layer. Okay. Now, what that means is that I set this line to a really thin line weight, and this glass line, which should appear pretty much about the same line weight as this elevation or interior elevation of this wall, it will have the same line thickness as if it was being cut through. Okay, so that is a conflict. What we can do in this situation is to select the object, go to the properties, and if you forgot how to do that, it's property or CH for change properties. Select, highlight the object, and then type in CH, and that'll give you this properties manager. And in here, it says the line type is bilayer, line weight is bilayer. Okay, so here's a different way that you can set line weights by object. So instead of setting line weights by layer, you can select individual objects and select, let's say, a thinner line weight. So this one right here, and set it to 0.05. Okay, so now this appears as a little bit thinner than the super thin line, or the thin line right there. Okay, so go ahead and select the object, and then go ahead and change the line weight not by layer but by object. Did I put 0.5 for the other one? Yes, 0.05. Okay. So what you might want to do is when you set one, you can go ahead and create a different layer or another layer name saying glass elevation or something and set that to its own line weight, or you can change the object itself. So if I got one changed, I could always go to match properties, select that guy, and then make sure all of my elevation glass is of that line weight. Okay, so that should have taken care of that.